So let's take a look at this idea of an experience being non-transferable, because, for example, if
non-transportable, but either one works.
Yeah. Okay, non-transportable. Sorry. Yeah. I apologize for butchering.
Okay. Hey, I coined one thing in my life. One thing in my life I coined. Non-transportable.
Yeah, and I apologize. It's actually I really
just don't tell any epistemologists. They're probably all over that and go, what? No. Go ahead.
So anyway, so like I had not only ordinary religious experiences, but I've had an extraordinary religious experience that was integral to my conversion to Christianity. And I can tell you the story if you're interested. But the point is that, I had this experience that to me was really actually central to my conversion to Christianity. I don't know if I would have converted to Christianity necessarily if it wasn't for this experience. And this experience actually was so profound that it's probably the reason why I would foresee myself always remaining a committed Christian, because of the power of that experience. And so if you're saying, though, that I'm justified in my belief because I've had that experience, then why would it not then be transportable, right? Because if it's not transportable, then are you ultimately saying or implying that person isn't truly justified in their beliefs because of that experience? It seems to me like there's got to be a connection between an idea being transportable and it genuinely being bona fide justification that should actually be transportable.
Yeah, the reason I refer to it as non-transportable justification is because that your subjective evaluation, the experience yourself, like I want to call it qualia, whatever your sense data is unique to you. You cannot say to me, hey, Steve, please come experience what I've experienced to try to evaluate it as, hey, do you think this is proper justification? You can describe it to me, right? But in the description, I think a lot of information is lost.
Yeah.
Because I'm now evaluating your description, whether you're justified, not your experience.
Right. Well, what I think is interesting is that when you actually look at the types of religious experiences that people have, and I'm going to qualify that by saying within a particular faith tradition, many times those experiences are fairly commonplace, in that a large number of people will report having a similar kind of experience. And let me just tell you a quick story. The experience that I had was sensing a presence in the room with me. It wasn't like a vague sense that God was present. It was almost felt like there was a person in the room with me. And this happened to coincide with me reading the Sermon on the Mount and recognizing that what Jesus is teaching here in terms of how his disciples should live a truly righteous life was true, and also recognizing that there's no way I could ever live up to those standards. And it was at that moment I had this experience that literally was critical to my conversion. It was at that point, it's like, okay, I believe that this is true. And a number of years ago, I was recounting this story at a conference in London. And afterwards, a neuroscientist came up to me and said, I had a very similar experience where I had this overwhelming sense of a real presence. And that actually was part of how I converted to Christianity, was through that. So in a sense, he actually shared with me, virtually an identical experience that was critical to his conversion. So in the same way that you and I maybe taste lemon differently, but still can come together with like a common description of what the lemon flavor is and that taste is like, I would argue that when it comes to religious experiences, that's also possible as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go on record. I've had similar experiences like that. Look, I've had what's called the old hag syndrome. You don't know what that is. There's a lucid state where you see an old hag, which is basically a lady in gray. I've had that experience. I've seen, like a floating demon above my head in a lucid state, even though I wasn't scared of it. I didn't think it was a demon. I still think it's obviously, internalized. But to me, in my curiosity, I wasn't scared. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. What's going on? But we all probably have had feelings of being something in the room, presence, things like that. That's been ubiquitous throughout humankind for thousands of years. I don't think that anybody's really going to argue that when we say that we've had some kind of experiences, they're just going to by fiat say, no, you didn't, right? I think that's a very poor way to have a discussion. I take the principle of charity. I completely believe you 100% that you've had these experiences, right? You have to at least give an interlocutor that much respect. And unfortunately, I see a lot of people, they don't. They're like, this, oh, you didn't have these experiences. But it's like, wait, I've had these types of experiences, right? We just come to different conclusions.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of it, again, is internalized. But your personal experience, let me relate one of mine, that one of the reasons I converted. I was head over heels in love in high school with somebody, and I was hanging out with her at her house, and her mom was experiencing headaches, and she had called the Christian missionaries over, and they anointed her head with oil, and they started saying a blessing. And I'm sitting there on the couch, and I wasn't really religious at all, matter of fact, but I mean, I was looking into it, at least because she was a Christian. And so I was sitting there, and I was in prayer, and I was like like this, and all of a sudden my entire body lit up, like lit up, like if you put a bulb of 100-watt bulb in front of my eyes, you could see the pink. I could see the pink. I could feel it, and I felt like I hate to say this, but I felt like I was high, like you just lifted, and I was like experiencing this for several, I'd say 20 seconds or so, and then I said amen, and it was gone. And the first thing I said out of my mouth was whoa. I remember that very clearly. I was 17 years of age, and I was like whoa, and people, they kind of looked at me like, what's going on? But when I asked them about it, right, they're like, oh, well, that's the Holy Ghost. So my objective argument was, okay, is that a reasonable explanation for what I've had? And of course, you cavalierly mentioned earlier to me before the burning of the bosom, right?
Yeah.
And of course, to a charismatic or a Pentecostal, they might say, oh yeah, that's the Holy Ghost, right? That because the charismatics really do believe very strongly in things like speaking in tongues and gifts of the Holy Ghost and things of that nature. But then you tell them, well, these were Mormons, these were Latter-day Saints. They're like, oh, it couldn't be that then. It was some other feel, it could have been a demonic entity. And I'm like, well, it didn't feel like a demonic. It didn't feel spiritual either to me. It literally just felt like what I described it, but I didn't feel a holy sensation. I didn't feel unholy. Didn't feel like it was Jesus. Didn't feel like it was God. Didn't feel like anything but what I described, which was just objectively what the facts were. But of course, being 17 and also being in love, and also not really understanding a lot about theology or epistemology at the time, my conclusion was, okay, this makes sense. It was the Holy Ghost. But it was weird. I always thought it was weird when I went to a testimony meeting, and you stand in front of your ward and your congregation, and you say, I know the church is true, and you're predicating of that upon your subjective evaluation of what you experienced. Now, as somebody who loves epistemology, I know that I was not justified back then to claim knowledge. Right. So when people say that I know this to be the case, I do try to undermine those justifications, because to claim knowledge requires very specific conditions. And I recognize it myself. I was not justified to claim knowledge back then. I didn't have knowledge, right? I had belief, but it didn't meet the criteria for knowledge.